Hey everyone, this is Stephen Judge, clinical naturopath in Sydney, Australia. Today I just want to quickly highlight the relationship between copper and estrogen. The reason I want to quickly highlight the relationship between excess copper levels and hormonal health is that it is one of the key drivers of underlying anxiety and dysmenorrhea or painful periods, menorrhagia or heavy periods, irregular periods, mental health issues, and overall hormonal imbalance. If you have a thyroid issue, there's an extremely high chance that you may have excess copper levels as well. So you might be someone who experiences anxiety and or hormonal imbalances and symptoms such as heavy and painful periods, PMS, gut issues and adrenal fatigue might be in there as well. And typically, a lot of people have been taking herbs and supplements and making the dietary and lifestyle changes they've been told are good for balancing out hormones, but nothing really seems to be shifting. So if this sounds like you, listen up, because what I'm about to go through may be the key underlying reason that is driving these issues that you're missing addressing in your treatment. So copper toxicity, high levels of copper, both stored in the body and in its unbound form, floating around in the bloodstream, are what can be driving most of these symptoms. So it's one of the key things that you've really got to address if it's there and correct, because if you are looking to treat the underlying cause, it's one of these underlying organic things in the body that is driving an imbalanced biochemistry, basically. And it won't resolve until the excess copper is brought down. So while herbal medicine is a really important and powerful intervention for regulating hormones for a variety of reasons that I use frequently with my female clients, if you haven't addressed having excess copper levels, the herbs are essentially still a band-aid and you're not getting to one of the core underlying causes. And herbs won't really bring excess copper levels to a balance on their own as much as nutritional medicine interventions will. So this is something I pretty much now screen all of my female clients for, who come in seeking help with anxiety, who also have hormonal imbalances and heavy or painful periods. I'd say 90% of the time, the women I'm seeing in clinic, it turns out they have excess copper levels. So basically, copper is a heavy metal that we do need a minuscule amount, but it does need to be in a delicate balance with a mineral that's very important for our health called zinc. Now, zinc is an extremely important mineral that is calming and relaxing to our nervous system, that helps us make neurotransmitters such as serotonin and GABA, which are calming. Zinc is super important for our immune function and for our digestion, and it's also a very important antioxidant. Whereas having excess copper levels drives a zinc deficiency because they need to be in a correct ratio. And so then having elevated copper, it fires up the brain, as opposed to zinc, which is an antioxidant. Copper is a pro-oxidant or a free radical, and it acts like a neurotoxin and affects our neurotransmitter production, ultimately driving anxiety symptoms and hormonal imbalances. And the anxiety can get extremely exacerbated when we're under a lot of stress. So estrogen and copper are intricately related. Copper tends to raise estrogen in the body, and estrogen tends to cause copper to rise. They tend to feed one another. The most typical symptoms of having high copper and then estrogen dominance essentially are heavy periods, fibroids, endometriosis, PMS, and anxiety, and also usually to some degree of fatigue and gut issues. So high copper levels can be one of the main underlying reasons for PMS, chronic fatigue, even migraines, brain fog. And on top of that, when you have high copper levels in the body, this is what causes iron deficiency. So iron is another important mineral like zinc, which is super important for a variety of reasons, that women will also lose a lot in their bleed every month. So on top of that, if when you take a zinc supplement, zinc competes with iron for absorption. So there are all these women out there taking iron supplements because they're fatigued and have heavy periods, not realizing that it might be affecting their zinc levels depending on how they're taking the iron, which is causing copper to stay elevated, and this cycle just continues. So that's, the most common scenario I see in clinic is, a woman presents with anxiety and she may also have heavy and or painful periods. There'll usually be iron deficiency thrown in there due to the excess copper and the iron's not coming up. They may also have gut issues. And the main core reason for all of this is that high copper levels are driving all of it and they're not being dealt with. So you might be thinking, well, why would women be presenting with so many copper issues? So the oral contraceptive pill increases copper in the body due to its effect on raising estrogen levels. The oral contraceptive pill also causes zinc deficiency as well as a B vitamin deficiency, and the B vitamins are important for optimizing zinc utilization. And the oral contraceptive pill also disrupts our gut flora. So, that has many different effects on our health in the grand scheme of things. We have copper piping. You might have copper piping in your home, and just drinking unfiltered tap water generally is full of other heavy metals on top of copper, like lead. So this is another way of accumulating copper levels in the body and driving iron levels down. Plant-based diets. This is an interesting one because plant-based diets are generally deficient in zinc. You can get zinc from plant foods, but it's much more difficult as being able compared to getting it from animal foods. And plant foods tend to be a bit higher in copper levels. For example, avocado, chocolate, nuts, they all have much higher copper levels, especially compared to zinc. So this shouldn't be an issue if the zinc intake is adequate, but it surely isn't for most people on a plant-based or particularly a strict vegan diet. Also, low intake of vitamin C can keep copper levels high because vitamin C is a key antioxidant for keeping copper levels down. Environmental estrogens or xenoestrogens that come from plastics, hormones in cattle and dairy, xenoestrogens in cosmetics, even receipts from cash registers. All of these sources of xenoestrogens drive copper up in the body because these chemicals are acting like estrogen and they're acting on your estrogen receptors in the body. And so this is keeping copper levels up too and keeping zinc levels down. Our soil is extremely depleted of key minerals that we need like zinc. And ironically, many organically farmed fruit and vegetables do technically use pesticides, but they're non-synthetic pesticides. But majority of the ones that are used on organically grown plants contain copper. So, if you're listening and you're predominantly plant-based, you are on the OCP or have been in it in the past for, a few years or more. Some women are on it for, 10 to 20 years. Drink tap water, don't drink filtered water, eat organic, don't use natural cosmetics. You're highly stressed. This is all like the perfect environment for a copper storm. Even if you're not strictly plant-based, due to a variety of all the other factors, that still may be a chance that this is an issue for you. Even pregnant women who, if they have high copper levels, these can be passed on to their babies who grow up. And many kids grow up today who babies are born with high levels of heavy metals, including copper, that shouldn't be there, but it's because of the lifetime of an accumulation of heavy metals such as copper, which are in the body, and then women give birth. These are being passed on to babies. So these kids can grow up from a very young age being copper toxic, which is what can be driving them to have iron deficiency, which can drive behavioral issues as well. Zinc deficiency, this can be driving gut issues, behavioral issues in young kids, So it's also, super important to address this in young children with these presentations. And if you're planning on having a baby, it's such a incredibly important to spend 6 to 12 months in preconception care with a practitioner to ensure you're in an optimum state of health. One of the best things you can do if you're thinking of having a child is to have a preconception plan and finding out if you have excess levels of heavy metals, including copper, and then getting them down and being in an optimum state of health before conceiving. So there's some very specific tests I do with women who come in presenting like this with me. Like I said, it's pretty routine now. I'm pretty much screening most women for this. So I get them to do some general blood tests, but 3 bloods that some GPs might do for me, but sometimes it comes out of pocket. It costs about $70 to $80. It's totally worth it though. It's plasma zinc levels, serum copper levels, and then another test for something called ceruloplasmin. The ceruloplasmin it's like a transporter protein that is responsible for transporting copper around the bloodstream. So I use these 3 markers. I'm not so much interested in the blood level of zinc and copper. That's not really giving me much of an indication of how much is stored in the body. That's more just a snapshot of what's floating around the bloodstream at the time. But what I can calculate using this plasma zinc, serum copper, and ceruloplasmin is the percentage of copper that is floating around in the bloodstream that is not bound to the ceruloplasmin. Because when it's not bound to the ceruloplasmin and it's at a certain level, it acts like a pro-oxidant, like a free radical, and it's a nice indication of how much unbound copper is floating in the bloodstream and therefore driving these symptoms, particularly anxiety. So we use that as a marker, and then over 3 to 6 to 9, 12-month periods, we'd get this level down using particular therapies. So I also use HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis, which is more to look at stored levels of copper and a range of other heavy metals in the body that are ready to be excreted. So the zinc copper ceruloplasmin combined with the hair tissue mineral analysis testing are kind of the 2 core tests that I get most of my clients to do so we can address this component. And even if it turns out it wasn't so much of an issue, at least we have made sure it's not an issue. It's better than guessing and most of the time ending up taking supplements, making changes, but not seeing much change. So like any holistic naturopathic care, it's not just about this one thing. We need to look at the whole thing holistically as well and treat the individual. But because we're dealing with the body needing to excrete heavy metals and have optimum levels of other minerals in the body, there is generally the need for some gut support, some microbiome support, and also some stomach and liver support to ensure that your digestion is strong, you are eliminating properly, the bowels are regular, and we have this whole kind of ecosystem of optimal health. The gut and liver support, super important for making sure when we're trying to balance hormones out and balance minerals and heavy metals that you are excreting and eliminating properly. Because if you go in with these therapies and go in with these treatments to get heavy metals down and your gut and your liver, particularly the liver and the colon, aren't excreting excess hormones and metals properly, this is when people get sick. They go in with supplements that might be too strong, they're not eliminating properly, and then when these minerals and hormones are reabsorbed, people get a flare-up of symptoms and they feel worse. So it's, it's a very intricate, delicate thing. You've got to go in very individually with each person. There's no one set protocol. So within someone's treatment, they'll most probably be taking zinc in some very particular forms, but you have to be careful because if you have really high levels of unbound copper, then if you take a really strong zinc, that is going to cause way too much zinc being excreted in the bloodstream and in the liver, and it can cause a worsening of symptoms, basically. Molybdenum is another key mineral for getting excess copper levels down. It's a mineral we need in tiny amounts. And again, you don't want to take too high a dose. It does need to be monitored carefully with a practitioner because you don't want to get a worsening of symptoms. B vitamins are usually a core treatment strategy as well for nervous system support and utilizing copper properly. Vitamin C rich foods, usually sometimes supplementation as well. And most women also need iron in there as well because they need to get their iron levels up. But this needs to be taken separate from zinc, so it just needs to be kind of figured out for the person with the practitioner. So it's super important to get all the right testing done by a practitioner who can interpret these results, tailor it into a treatment plan based on your whole presentation, as no one woman is the same. You're all unique with unique requirements and presenting health concerns, and you are all wonderful. It may be been driving you crazy that you have these insane, annoying symptoms that don't seem to resolve no matter what you do. This may be one of the key missing links. It usually is in the clients I see, which is so cool because then they can finally get on with their lives. The anxiety is not so, a little bit of stress and anxiety in life is normal. And, we can build resilience through stress, but I'm talking about stress and anxiety that's like crippling and, you don't feel like yourself and it's like just too much. And, I also acknowledge there are underlying emotional and psychological, spiritual things driving anxiety and underlying stress and trauma. And this is an important part of treatment too. But this is just one of those key organic physical things that, you could be doing all that other work. But if there's like a heavy metal issue, you've got to get in there and correct this as part of a whole treatment plan. And this is usually one of the key missing links for most women I see. So if you have any questions, please drop me a message in the comments. Please share this information with anyone who may benefit. And, if you think this is you or one of your friends, don't put it off, because if you feel like this is something that's driving your symptoms, it can be dealt with. You just have to know what's really going on. And so that's it from me. I hope you have an awesome afternoon, and I'll see you soon. Bye.